So I came across an article recently about all the different benefits of reading your Bible every single day, and there was one perk that really stood out to me. It says that scripture always brings you joy, which at first I thought sounded really lovely and amazing, but then I started wondering what that actually meant, because honestly I read the Bible all the time and I know that it's filled with so many books that are kind of sad or down or just depressing. So I decided to test what this article says by reading one whole book of the Bible every single day this week to see what kind of benefits I would actually get out of it, and to see if it actually makes me happier or more joyful as a person in general. And the first book I'm going to be reading is Ephesians. I also had a little suspicion as to what book of the Bible might help me answer this question the most, so I may have done a little bit of manipulating when it came to writing all the books down for my jar, and I wrote this book down 5 times because I know it's gonna help me a lot, so I really want to get it. But trust me, it's such a good book and it's gonna be so worth it. I just really hope I get it. I just finished reading Ephesians and it was such a good one. There are so many good verses in this book that I feel like I just want to write down and memorize. I think my favorite one is chapter 3 verse 18, which says, "And may you have the power to understand, as all God's people should, how wide, how long, how high, and how deep his love is." I just thought that one was so nice. And yeah, this is starting off really well so far. So I finished reading Ephesians last night and it was such a good book to read. I feel like this was a great book to start off with. It was so uplifting, and like I said, there's so many great verses in that book. And so I will say that reading that book yesterday definitely made me a little bit happier, just because it was such a happy, uplifting book. But I think my main question is that, am I gonna feel the same way after reading some of the darker, more sad Old Testament books that are in the Bible? I'm hoping I can figure that out as I continue reading these books. So I'm gonna choose which book I'm reading today. I didn't mention it before, but I have a wide variety of books in this jar, from some of the shortest New Testament books in the entire Bible to the longest book in the entire Bible, which is Jeremiah, which will be very difficult to read in one day, even though it is such a good book. I also put Revelation in here, which is one of the craziest and hardest books to comprehend for me. So like I said, I just have a very wide variety. Okay, I got Romans today. This is another kind of happy New Testament book. It's also a bit longer, so I need to go ahead and start reading now, and we'll see if this makes me more joyful today. It's really sunny outside and it looks nice and warm, so I think I'm gonna take this outside and do a little bit of outdoor reading today. So I've been reading through a decent amount of Romans today. This book is definitely a lot longer than Ephesians, what I did yesterday. So it's taking me a bit longer to get through, but I am really enjoying it. I don't know if I've ever read Romans all the way through in one day. I'm really excited to do that because I noticed yesterday that there's something so just fulfilling, and also I feel like it helps to understand a book so well when you read it all in one sitting, and when you finish the end of the book, you still remember the beginning of it. I don't know, there's something that makes me feel just so good about that, and I feel like I can understand a book so much better when I do that. So I'm really excited to do that with this book because I don't think I've ever done that with Romans before. So I have to be totally honest with you, I was planning on reading the majority of Romans last night before I went to bed. Although I read for a while outside, I feel like I didn't get that much done when I was reading during the afternoon. And I was planning on doing the majority of that last night, and then I got busy, I had to do a couple of other things, and then I realized right before I went to bed that I just forgot to finish Romans. So I think what I want to do today is read whatever my new book is going to be, plus finish the rest of Romans, which means I might have a ton to read today, but I really want to finish Romans regardless. So I've been thinking, and I've decided to come up with some kind of a reward to encourage me to not fail any part of this challenge again. I really want to make sure I'm reading a full book of the Bible every single day, and I don't want to keep slacking on that. So I was just looking at the Crumble Cookie website, which I often do. They have one specific cookie that looks so amazing and I want to get so badly. So I've decided that if I can go the rest of this week reading my full book of the Bible a day and not failing anymore, I will reward myself at the end with this amazing crumble cookie. So anyway, I'm gonna pick my book for today, and I'm very excited to see what it might be. I don't know if I want something like Jeremiah or if I just want to avoid Jeremiah altogether because it's gonna take so long to get through. Jude. Okay, so this is also a New Testament book. We're really doing a lot of New Testament stuff this week. I think it's the last book before Revelation. Now as I think about it, I don't even know if I remember what this book is even about. It looks like it's very short as well, which should be good because that means I can read the rest of Romans plus this all in today. So I just read over the book of Jude. This book is super short and I read it very few times before, maybe only even once before. So I didn't really remember what it was about, and then even after I just read it, I was still kind of unsure of the purpose of the book. Basically, it's a letter from Jude and he's saying that originally he was gonna write about the salvation we all share, but he said he's changing his mind and instead he's gonna write about urging you to defend the faith that God has entrusted once and for all this time to his holy people. So as he was writing, he had like a change of heart of what he wanted to write about. Anyway, the more that I looked up about it, the more I understood that this book is probably intentionally placed right at the end of the entire book of the Bible, right before Revelation, because it's such a good encouragement to like stay strong and keep with your faith even when hard things come. So the book of Jude is kind of like teaching you exactly what you should do and how you should live as you're waiting for what comes in the book of Revelation. So the book is actually way more interesting than I thought and I really enjoyed it. I'm also so happy that I was able to finish Romans today and get this one done, so now I'm back on schedule and I'm hoping I'm not going to fail again this entire week. I'm about to pick from the jar for today, but I'm so surprised that I haven't gotten my book yet that I put in there 5 times. I'm really hoping I get it sometime soon, maybe today, because it's such a good book of the Bible, and like I said, specifically there's one verse that I feel like is very overlooked but helps so much with understanding so many parts of the Bible. So I really want to get this book at some point before the end of the week, so maybe it'll work today. It feels like it should already have been a whole week, but I've only been doing this for 3 days so far. Today's my 4th day. But anyway, time for a new book that I'm going to start in a minute. Okay, this one's gonna be hard. It's the book of Proverbs. So this is an Old Testament book, but it's not like a typical Old Testament book. It's not like a storybook. It gives New Testament vibes in the way that it's like just a bunch of lessons that you're learning. It's 31 chapters. To put that in perspective, Romans was only 16 chapters. So it's a lot of reading for today, but I am happy it's a little something different. But I got a lot of reading to do. I'm not very far into Proverbs yet. I'm only like 6 chapters in, but there's already so much I wanted to say about it. So this book is written by Solomon, who is kind of like famously known in earlier books for being blessed with a lot of wisdom from God. These are Proverbs all about essentially like how to be wise. So he's kind of like the best person to have written this book. So in the beginning of this book, it presents you with like 2 paths in life, one of wisdom and then one of doing wrong and I guess like sinning. And so the whole book kind of just gives you a lot of evidence as to why you should choose the path of wisdom instead of the path of sinning. There's a lot of great individual verses in this book. This book is quoted all the time. A big point of Proverbs that people talk about a lot is how it says over and over again that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and it really ties in general like life wisdom into having a relationship with God and fearing God, and how the two go like automatically together. So I just read a bunch of Proverbs outside, and something that I noticed is that like basically the first half of the book is pretty much just like a normal book, and then the second half is when they actually read out all the individual proverbs. And basically like a proverb is just a small verse that gives you like a little tidbit of advice. So in a way it does feel a little bit repetitive because it's just these same like individual things over and over again. A lot of them are more or less saying the same thing, but I feel like it's good to just repeat this stuff over and over, and it's like really getting it ingrained in your mind. And it's also moving really quickly. Like I'm already halfway through the book. So I'm on chapter 15. I'm gonna take a little break now and then hopefully read the rest of them pretty soon. So it's been a little bit and I have finished the book of Proverbs. It went so much more quickly than I thought it was gonna go, and I think that's because I forgot how much I really do love the book of Proverbs. So I was very invested the entire time I was reading it. The very ending, Proverbs 31, is probably one of the most like well-known chapters in the Bible. It basically shows an example of a woman who has chosen the path of wisdom and like walked down it and like seen the results of what that looks like. I think a lot of people think it's just an example like for women to follow, but it's really, at least I think, an example for everyone, because really the 2 paths are options for everyone and she's just chosen the one of wisdom. So I think it's really an example for anyone. But anyway, it gives like very specific examples of like what she does in her day-to-day life to exemplify this wisdom. And all these examples are like she wakes up early, she makes clothes for her children, and she feeds her family and like all this stuff, which obviously like sewing clothes and like making your own bedspreads doesn't really apply that much to us now. But it's essentially saying that she uses all of her time and energy to serve others, and the reason why she's able to be this way is because she's decided to take the path of wisdom in life instead of the path of sin. And there's so much like cool stuff in this book. There's so much more I feel like I could say about it. This book is so good, and I hadn't read it in a while, so I'm so happy that I got this book today because I forgot how much I liked it. It's day 5 and I'm about to pick my next book. Yesterday ended up being so fun. I'm so happy I got Proverbs. I loved reading that book, and I'm really hoping I get another good one like that again today. So I'm kind of up for reading anything. John, a gospel, obviously a New Testament book. This is a really good book, but a very long one at the same time. Like I said, this is a great book of the Bible, one of my favorites. This isn't really helping me test my theory much as to whether it's bringing me joy or not, because it obviously is, because the New Testament books are so happy and uplifting and stuff. So I put so many Old Testament books in this jar, and I haven't really picked any of them yet except for Proverbs, but I don't know, I'm just gonna keep going with the flow, and I'm gonna read John, and I am excited. I've just barely gotten into John, but I wanted to say that something I love the most about the book of John is that I feel like he's just such a good writer. He seems like a creative writer to me, and there's so much about the book that feels a lot more like a story. It just feels more creative. There's a little bit more suspense in it. Even just from the very beginning, it's almost like this little poem. And to me, it just makes the book so much more interesting to read. So I am very much enjoying this one so far. I'm just sitting in front of my window reading because it's just so pretty outside. It's only March, but it feels like spring is already here. There's this big tree that's blooming with the prettiest flowers right now, and it's right outside my window, and it's very pretty. So I'm just kind of watching that and reading the book of John. It's getting into like late afternoon time, and I'm not quite halfway through with the book yet. I don't know why I'm moving through this one really slowly, which is a little bit concerning because I need to finish this. I've been thinking about my crumble cookie all week, so I'm not gonna give up. So this book covers a long period of time. It starts from the very beginning, like in the beginning of Genesis. It gives you a little blurb about that, and it goes into a little bit about Jesus's baptism. And now I'm in the parts where he's officially started his like ministry, and he's teaching and he's performing miracles and giving lessons and stuff. I'm specifically on chapter 10, which is the part about the good shepherd. I just read over that verse that says, "The thief's purpose is to steal and kill and destroy. My purpose is to give them a rich and satisfying life." So again, it's really good. I just have a lot of reading left to do before the end of the day. I'm gonna be honest, I was close to not finishing John last night, and I'm so glad I did. I didn't want to fail any part of this challenge again. One thing I especially loved about reading John yesterday was that I felt like so many other books that I had been reading were all about after Jesus' story, but they were all talking about Jesus like in the past. I like first saw the impact of what he did and then went back and read his actual story, and that was kind of cool. Anyway, it's time for me to pick for today. We only have 2 more days to pick my favorite book that I really want to read. Again, there's 5 papers in here of it. I don't know why I haven't chosen it yet, but I'm hoping I will soon. Oh my gosh, I like forgot that this book was in here. It is Revelation. For those of you who don't know, this is the very last book of the Bible. It is known for being one of the most complicated, one of the most scary books in the entire Bible. I've read this book like once before in my life and didn't understand much of it, and now I'm gonna read it again today. We'll see how this goes, but this is gonna be interesting. It's a little bit later and I have read some more of Revelation, plus I did a little bit more research on the book. Something that I've kind of accepted is that there's no way I'm gonna fully understand Revelation through just reading over it really quickly in one day. At some point I really do want to spend some more time going super slowly through this book and trying to understand things passage by passage. So if you think that's something you would want to watch, I don't know, maybe I'll do a whole video on this book. Anyway, from what I do understand, this book is a vision that John has. So I just read John's gospel. This same John had a vision given to him by Jesus about what's gonna happen in the end or whatever. And if you've read it before, you would know it's very like metaphorical. There's like visions of this scroll, and there's a bunch of seals on the scroll, and they get opened up one by one, and they all mean different things. A cool thing I feel like I'm seeing through this read through is that even though I have basically no idea what's going on, what I do know is that this vision was given to John by God, and because of that, it shows that God knows exactly what's gonna happen in the future. He's in charge of it. He's narrating every bit of it, which makes this pretty scary book a lot less scary to me. In the beginning, when I first started talking about how how I was confused as to how all scripture can bring joy. I mentioned how a lot of books of the Bible are really scary or sad or even a little bit depressing. And when I was saying that, Revelation was one of the biggest books on my mind. But even though it's still a little bit confusing, I'm realizing it's not nearly as scary as I thought, which definitely does make me a lot happier reading through this book, especially even more so than when I've read it before and I didn't understand this part of it. For my last day, I drew from the jar and I was really expecting to get the book that I had been waiting for this entire time, but instead I got a book called Haggai, which is a really short book that honestly I did enjoy a lot. It didn't take me long to finish it, and now I have completed this entire challenge. And since I did it with no more failures, I was able to get my crumble cookie, and it looks so good. But before I try it, I really want to tell you about the book that I was really hoping to get. It's the Book of Lamentations, and I really love this book so much because it's like the epitome of one of those really sad, depressing books that I had mentioned earlier. It takes place during a time where the people felt like God had completely abandoned them, and as you can probably guess from the title, it's just filled with laments about people complaining to God about this. And it definitely doesn't seem like the type of book that should bring you any sort of joy, which is a big reason I wanted to read it for this video. But I also knew that there was this one verse halfway through the book that says, "The faithful love of the Lord never ends. His mercies never cease. I say to myself, the Lord is my inheritance, therefore I will hope in him." Which is the perfect little like spark of hope in the midst of a really sad book, which always makes me so happy when I read this book. So although like I saw this week, there are many very obviously joyful and happy books of the Bible, even the more depressing ones always seem to end with some kind of form of hope. And that's not just with Lamentations, it's in like basically every sad book of the Bible, but you can only really see it if you read the entire book all the way to the end. And like I said, I read the Bible a lot, so this is something I kind of already knew before starting this challenge. It's just not something I thought about, and I think it's not something I could have thought about until I spent a long period of time being really invested in the Bible and reading a whole book every day. And yes, maybe I did also just kind of want an excuse to read the Bible more this week. This cookie is really good.